Hello, I'm Dwayne Smith, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for GoodLife Fitness. And I'm really happy to be here today. Alongside me is Elizabeth Chi, a Group Fitness Instructor based in Calgary. So the first question I want to ask you is, your move to Canada was extremely traumatic and filled with a lot of turmoil. So talk about that experience a little bit, from your childhood, from what you could remember, or maybe what was told to you.
Well, remarkably, I do remember quite a few things. We did try to leave Vietnam the first time in 1976. We were captured, so we failed at that attempt. My father then had to serve another 3 months in jail. We did successfully leave Vietnam in 1979, but like you said, the journey was not one without a lot of trauma, and there were times where pirates came onto the boat and they would, take women, children, they stole, they raped. My parents would hide me and my sister because pirates would take little girls in exchange for water, right? So I remembered explicitly 2 times where my mom layered on clothing and I hid under her clothes. So, that was our boat experience. And then when we got to the shores of Malaysia, the Malaysian government didn't want us there. And they were going to push us out into international waters, and we would have, for sure, probably would have died because more pirates would come and also rob you again, right? So the men on the boat sabotaged the boat, and they had no choice but to take us to the shores. And we were there for about a month before the UN took us into a refugee camp. And this is all in Kota Baru in Malaysia. And we were very fortunate because Canada at the time was very welcoming to taking immigrants. So my father said that he heard of good things about Canada and he wanted our family there. So we got to come to Canada, and a church from PEI sponsored our family, an Anglican church in Prince Edward Island. We were only there for a year because my father realized that unless you're a fisherman or a potato farmer, you're not going to make it there. So he came to Calgary. But even in that experience I always felt like I had to help my family. So I would do things like steal milk money from the class because I thought that we didn't have any money. So it was a very different experience growing up in Canada for me.
And when you think about yourself growing up in Calgary in the 80s, what was that like?
It was a very different time. There was a handful of Asians in my school, and you really did feel different, right? We didn't really feel like we belonged. I unfortunately experienced quite a bit of racism at a very young age. At the time, I didn't really understand it, right? My friends would be invited to birthday parties, and certain girls were allowed to sleep over, but I wasn't invited to sleep over, or I wasn't allowed into a home because I was Chinese. And this would be said to me from an adult, right? Who at the time, you don't quite understand, right? So it was a very, very different time, and it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, and I not being able to sleep over at a friend's house just sounds ridiculous to me. But there was a lot of, low times. Was there any, and I almost feel awkward asking this, but were there any high times? Were there any moments that you can remember that were good, were positive?
I reflect back now, and it's more so about looking at my parents and their work ethic, and it's more about I'm very proud of what they were able to accomplish, right? But because you grow up with these experiences of not having equal opportunity, unfortunately, it's not saying that I look back at it as all negative, but it was just different, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess those are the kind of maybe neutral points where it wasn't a low, but there was something that you could really reflect on during that time that may not necessarily be, categorized as a high, but at least it was a moment where you probably didn't feel, some of the anguish and challenges that you're going through. You've been with GoodLife now for over 18 years. How's that journey been?
I was going through a separation and divorce at the time, and I was finding that my behaviors were like quite unhealthy. So I thought, okay, let's join the gym. And I can still remember the music was pumping in the group exercise room. It was body pump class. And I was like, well, okay, let's try this, right? And honestly, I categorized myself as a group exercise groupie because I would do like 2 to 3 classes a day. I would go to everything they did. Like I remember they would go to like the women's show or some sort of trade show, and I would go there and I would attend it. I would follow them around to the point where they were like, you just start teaching. And I'm like, I can't do this. But there was one spot left for body step training. And at first I said no. And then I think I took the very last spot on the last day. And it was the best thing I've ever done. Like, honestly, I have the best side hustle in terms of doing what I do. It has been life-changing for me. Basically, it was a place that I belonged. I finally had a place that my race didn't have anything to do with it, you know, my gender or anything. Nothing had anything to do with it. It was just, I just belonged. People are so wonderful. The members became friends. You know, it's just a great place.
And you talked about you feeling that sense of belonging. Was that the #1 contributor to you starting classes and being an instructor? Was it that sense of community, that belonging?
You know, growing up, like I said, I didn't have a strong base of friendships, right? Because that opportunity didn't exist for me. I was always an outsider, right? Or you belonged to the handful of Asians that you were there, but we were always excluded from everything. So, but here it's like I was welcome with like everyone else. And I was good at it. I was very good at teaching, you know, and you come to the gym and members are excited to see you and they ask where you are if they haven't seen you for a long time, right? So it's been just, yeah, a very good opportunity for me.
So if someone was looking to join GoodLife as a member or an associate, based off of your experiences, what would you tell them?
You know, this is a great company. How lucky am I to have had such a great employer to role model what it is like to have more than sufficient resources, support, training, education, right? You know, we value being inclusive, and we always have, you know, so it's a great place to develop your skills, to belong to something, and to be impactful to others, right? Whether it's your coworker or you know, members at the gym, right? And I don't know where else you can do that other than GoodLife.
Thank you so much. Sharing your story, growing up in Calgary, and also your GoodLife experience over the last several years has just been totally remarkable and inspiring. So thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I think that everyone should have this opportunity, and they can.